But now we're joined by our good friend John Kurtz, KC Sports Network, who I'm sure is hard at work making sure the Chiefs don't abscond from Kansas City.
Yeah, boy, it's been an eventful week around here. I tell you what, man. I mean, look, I live on the Kansas side. In all honesty, at this point, so I was a Jackson County resident where they just had that vote up until November, and now I'm back in the burbs on the Kansas side. So hey, if the Chiefs and Royals want to come on over to the Kansas side, I will welcome them with open arms. The problem is, I think the Chiefs definitely want to. I'm not so sure if Kansas is going to be so keen on the Royals. So we'll see. There's a lot to sort out there.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll. Again, we'll see what happens. Did you hear the mayor of Dallas said that they should move back?
I did. Now someone was telling me, because a buddy of mine, Mason Vogt, who does a great job covering K-State that I used to work with quite a bit. He's a Cowboys fan. He told me that this guy has done that before. Like, this has been a thing for a while, trying to lobby for a second NFL team in Dallas. Yes. So I was like, okay, I guess the Chiefs are just a part of the shtick now. But I mean, hey, I can't blame the guy. Like, why not? You know, that was a part of my annoyance with this vote not passing. And for those that didn't follow it, like, the Royals and Chiefs did a horrendous job with the rollout of this. I wanted it to pass, but I can't blame people too much because they did a really poor job with it. But one of the reasons I wanted it to pass was so we didn't have to deal with stuff like that. It's like, now you get to see all these headlines. I saw Adam Schefter was like, oh, what happens with the Chiefs now? It's like, okay, the Chiefs are not going to leave. The Royals would be the concern there. But kudos to, shoot your shot. Shoot your shot, as they say. The mayor of Dallas apparently is doing that.
Absolutely. All right. John, Kansas State right now. Actually, before we talk spring football, let's talk a little bit about Jerome Tang. He has been rumored in circles to be a candidate for the Arkansas job. The last time we had you on, we asked you about his relationship with the university. And by the university, we meant the university president. And you felt that not necessarily there was water under the bridge, but both sides were kind of clear on what they needed going forward. They just got Doug McDaniel out of the portal. It does not seem to me that this is, and I know Jerome Tang very well, these are the moves of a guy who is looking at another job.
Yeah, so a lot has happened because, Richard Linton, the university president, not going to find many people that have a lot of good things to say about him, particularly anybody that's associated with athletics. He did reopen the Naquan Tomlin situation by agreeing 4 months later to an interview request from the local paper, the Manhattan Mercury. He agreed to do an interview in late February of a request that was put out around the time in November when all that was happening with Naquan Tomlin, which, if you care about not instigating something with your own Tang is a horrible idea, I tend to think that may have been just more either calculated or it's just a guy who can't stand to be the bad guy and wanted to give his side of the story. But it produced this article that came out a couple of weeks ago, and I don't begrudge the Mercury for running the article if the university president's going to grant you an interview. But the problem is it's just either a staggering lack of awareness about the fact that the article is going to get released right when the coaching carousel is going around, or you just don't care and, my way or the highway sort of stuff, and I'm going to do what I want to do. Either way, it was not a great sign, and I know that it did make the coaching staff very upset again. And so there was some concern for a while, but it seemed to die down. And I think one of the things that's really helped is how well K-State has responded with NIL to support Jerome Tang this year in the transfer portal, which is a big reason why they were able to land a guy like Doug McDaniel. TCU definitely has some fairly deep pockets too. So K-State was swimming in deep waters there, certainly relative to where they were at last year and came through. And, Max Asmus was a guy that went after really hard at the beginning of the portal last year. Competed up until the final minute with Texas, but didn't get him. I know there was some belief that NIL may have been a factor there. So K-State has really responded. And I tell you what, I'm pretty confident in saying K-State has top 15 to 20 NIL type resources right now in college basketball, at least for this year. So I think that, getting out in the portal with that and some of the guys that they're chasing right now who are pretty high up the board, in addition to McDaniel, who they've already gotten, has probably instilled a little bit more confidence in Tang and the job right now. And, if you follow Trilly Donovan and guys who are pretty connected in college hoops right now, I've said it over and over again, that's the name of the game now in college basketball. It is tilted so much more even in the last year to what kind of NIL support am I going to have to be how bad a guy wants to stay at a job. So I say all that to say I am much more calm about it than I was. I know that guys like Trilly have linked Tang to Arkansas for a long time, along with Chris Beard and Will Wade. And it seems like the Arkansas fan sentiment right now is much more in tune with the other two than it is Jerome Tang. They're more excited about those two anyway. So I'm not crazy worried about it at this point, but it is certainly something that's on my radar just because it's been out there enough. Now, I will also say Trilly Donovan has literally connected Jerome Tang with about every single job out there this offseason that's been open. He was even doing hypotheticals at one point in his Discord about like Tang to TCU if Jamie Dixon had taken the USC job. So I can tell you this. I did have someone tell me that USC definitely was interested in Jerome Tang, wanted to get him to interview, and that was shut down pretty quickly, and no real thought given to that. So, some things like that give me a little bit more peace of mind right now. But something certainly worth monitoring because of predominantly, I think, the relationship with the university president. I would also throw in he has an excellent relationship with the athletic director, Gene Taylor, who is ultimately his boss that he's going to be working with the most on a regular basis, which also helps.
So let's go to spring football now. The Avery Johnson era is upon us, and it is very exciting times in that, he can do a great many things that, most athletes can. I mean, he's just a special talent. What do you think changes around the offense as they go into a year knowing it's Avery Johnson's show and not Will Howard with Avery Johnson as the sprinkles on top of the sundae?
Yeah, that's the reason for a ton of the hype, I think, with the team right now is obviously looking at Avery Johnson and everything that he potentially brings to the table. And there are a lot of things that are different, right? Last year was, Will Howard and Colin Klein. They had been married together for a while and had been a very productive pair at K-State that won a Big 12 championship. Now you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator in Connor Riley and then a co-offensive coordinator in Matt Wells, who's obviously been a head coach before and a successful offensive coordinator. Guy ran a successful offense at Utah State, and his former protege, obviously Jordan Love, is now blowing up in the NFL. So there's a lot that's new with the offense. I think they have a lot of star power there. I mean, DJ Giddens is one of the more underrated players in the country, I think, just because of how good the running backs are in the Big 12, that he gets overlooked a bit. He's about as good as anybody in the country, and I think that tandem is going to be tremendous. They've also got Jace Brown developing at receiver, who I think is poised to be the best receiver probably that K-State's had since Tyler Lockett in 2014. Now, I'm not setting like Tyler Lockett level expectations there, and if you go look at the receivers for K-State since then, no offense to any of those guys, but it has not been the most star-studded position that K-State has had over the last decade. But there's a lot of excitement about Jace Brown, who's a roommate of Avery Johnson's, and they seem to have a real connection. So I know there's been a lot of buzz about those two. I will be very interested to see, one, obviously just how the offense looks in general with Riley calling the shots. And he did coordinate the offense in the bowl game, which went very well, and they beat a pretty good defense at NC State and scored 28 points and really felt like they left another at least 10 probably on the board just with some sloppiness and penalties and things that happened throughout the game. So I thought that was fairly encouraging. But I will be interested to see a guy who is an offensive line. He's an offensive line guy by trade. How much are they going to balance running Avery Johnson versus having him spread it around and throw the ball? Because, everybody can see it. He can run as well as about anybody in the country. I know some scoff at this, but he's kind of got a diet Lamar Jackson sort of skill set when it comes to how well he can run the ball. But he can definitely spin it too. And I think, you look around college football right now, we see quarterback injuries becoming such a factor in so many places. And at K-State, it's always been a factor. Happened a couple of times with Skylar Thompson. Happened a year when Jake Waters was there playing quarterback. It seemed like every year K-State goes through quarterback. Jesse Ertz got hurt on like the first series of the season, 2015. So, every single year almost K-State has dealt with QB injuries. They like to run the quarterback a lot historically. And even just everywhere else in the Big 12. Ask Texas Tech, for instance, about quarterback injuries and how much that can upset a season. So I think you have to be really careful with that, but it's such a tempting thing to do, right? And one of the other things I've heard out of spring is that K-State may, there's going to be a lot of movement here in the spring portal. I think you may see K-State try to move to look into what would be there for a backup quarterback kind of option, maybe a more experienced backup. I think they like the young talent that they have at quarterback behind Avery Johnson, but I don't know that it's there yet in terms of experience. So it just brings it back to, you got to be careful. I think the ceiling is the limit, sky's the limit for K-State with Avery Johnson as quarterback. But can you keep him healthy, and how do you best utilize his skill set with a lot of talent? I think there's a lot of frontline talent on offense. And then and maybe this leads into the next part of the discussion, you do have to replace a lot on the offensive line. So that will be an area of concern for sure heading into the season.
Yeah, look, I don't even have to talk about anybody else but Cooper Beebe, but KT Leviston, who I did all his games. The three of us did at Midway, know him well. He's out and probably on an NFL or UFL roster next year. Cooper Beebe's, probably going in the second round, I would think. Maybe the first guard taken when it's all said and done. So how do they replace those two guys among the others they'll have to replace?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can really, it's one of those cliches, right? But I don't know that you can truly replace Cooper Beebe. I mean, you're not going to get that kind of production. The guy was as good, as versatile an offensive lineman as you would find in the country, just an excellent, fabulous college football player. So that's a huge loss. And KT Leviston probably is a guy who's going to be a late round draft pick. So you're talking about replacing two NFL draft picks on your offensive line. They got a big boost when they got Easton Kilty out of the transfer portal. He was a pretty highly sought after offensive lineman that I think will be a plug and play starter, at least a plug and play contributor. A lot of times they've gone with like 7 or 8 guys that are kind of rotating through there. So I'm sure you will see him in that regular rotation playing, if not starting. And they do have 3 other players who have had some starting experience, and like Taylor Portier is a really talented interior offensive lineman that they've loved and raved about since he showed up. Unfortunately, he's had 2 season-ending injuries that have cost him to miss a ton of time. So if he can stay healthy, I think he's got a chance to be a really good player and somebody that they certainly believe in quite a bit. And beyond just the other 3 with starting experience, there are another 2 to 3 that definitely have playing experience that have contributed. So it's not like you're breaking in a lot of guys who have never played. It's just their roles are going to increase quite a bit, and you wonder there, all right, so there's a lot of depth. What is the quality of this depth, and do you have some of that star power on the offensive line? Because they definitely had that the last couple of years.
John, biggest concern overall, like if they don't get this done at the end of spring, it's panic time going into the fall.
I am a little concerned about like the interior of the defensive line, and so I might kind of twist this and say like, hey, if they don't add somebody out of the portal in the spring, that's a really tough position to add to in the portal, because there aren't as many like defensive tackles, like good defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen. So the price goes up on them, and it's just a much fiercer competition when you're trying to go get those guys. You're going to see a much higher abundance of skill position players because if you need a running back, that's a lot different story. But they lost Malcolm Alcorn Crowder from the recruiting class, who was thought to be one of the biggest pieces of that when he came in. I think there were some academic issues there that wound up severing the tie between he and K-State. And he, some places was listed as a defensive end, but kind of like a bigger defensive end, could have really fit up front in that 3-4, and I think would have slid inside some. And that was assuaging a lot of our concerns about some depth on the interior of the defensive line for K-State. They missed him. I know they were hot after another player in the portal that they didn't get. I'm spacing on his name. I believe he did wind up going to Baylor. It was Baylor or BYU. They missed out on one there too that I know K-State folks really, really were high on and wanted. So they've had some struggles there. They got a big time transfer at defensive end in Travis Bates, who I think is going to be an impact player for him. But interior of the defensive line has me a little bit concerned, especially because 2 of the guys that we expect to be contributing, including Usose Amalo, who is a guy that I think has all conference potential as a defensive tackle. They've been injured this spring. So I'm leery about that. They love the talent that they have at defensive end. I think they've got some budding stars out there, including Jordan Allen. That's probably a name to circle that nobody really knows right now that you will. K-State had to hold off Oklahoma and Tennessee to get him in the recruiting class a couple of years ago, which was the best class they've had in a long time. And I've heard nothing but really, really good things about him. So they've got a ton of young talent. Also, Chidi Izor, that's another name to remember. His brother plays linebacker at TCU and is a really good player. They love the potential of him and where he's coming at. But interior of the defensive line is definitely a concern for me. So I'd probably put that toward the top of the list. And then maybe, if you want to put like 1A, 1B, then the offensive line on the offensive side of the ball, like just make sure that things are starting to gel and develop there, which is a really hard thing to tell if you're like a media guy like us that, maybe some of the media members get to see a little bit of practice, but it's hard to evaluate offensive line play, so only the coaches would really know the answer to that. But I think those are kind of the areas that you worry about the most for this team.
All right, John Kurtz, KC Sports Network. John, we'll talk to you again soon. Please subscribe to his YouTube channel. He does a great job. John, if you ever want me as a guest on your show, I feel like we owe you about 30. So you call me anytime.
Hey, absolutely. And I got to give you guys a shout out, man. I was just watching the Brett Yormark interview the other day that you guys did at the Combine, man. That was excellent stuff. Really, really enjoyed that. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was great. 30 minutes. It's very educational. That's for sure. So, all right, John, we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Take care.
All right.